everyone, my name's Kelvin and welcome to my watercolor tutorial video for Procreate. If you're watching this video, it's probably because you purchased the Galaxy painting kit on Etsy. So after you download the purchase on Etsy, it's going to look like this PDF file basically. It'll look a little bit different than this, but pretty much the process is exactly the same. It'll say Galaxy watercolor painting kit and there's going to be this big green button, and just go ahead and click on that green button. It might ask you if you want to open this link. Just click open. It's going to open your browser and it's going to ask you again if you want to download it. So over here it says direct download, and it's going to ask you one more time. Are you sure you want to download? Just click download there and then it will start downloading. And if you look up here, you can see the progress of that download. So once the file is completely downloaded, you can just go to your home screen and open up your file browser. That's this little folder icon down here. And in some cases, it will just open up the PDF again, but we just need to minimize the PDF. So I'm just gonna zoom out, make the PDF go away, and then you'll be able to see the recent file we just downloaded. However, if you just click on it, it won't open. And the reason it doesn't open is because we are browsing in the recents area. So this is so important. After you download the kit and you open your file browser, you need to go down here and select Browse. And when you download a file, it's going to end up in your Downloads folder over here. Now in your Downloads folder, you have to manually look through until you find the Galaxy watercolor kit that you just downloaded. And now when you click on it, it will automatically unzip the file and give you this folder right here. So inside that folder, there's a couple of files. This one here, this is the actual paper texture. Here's the brushes, and here's the README. And if you need any help with this, again, you can email me on Etsy. Also send me an email directly because I did put my email address in this link, or you can leave a comment on this video. So I'm gonna start using this kit by just clicking on the paper texture, and it's gonna automatically import that into Procreate. And it may open up to the texture directly, or it may open up to something you were painting previously. So if you don't see this, just go to your gallery page, and then you're going to see the texture up here in the recent textures up in the corner. So this is the paper texture. Now I want to load the brushes. So I'm going to go back to my home screen. I'm going to go back to my file browser, and then I'm going to click on the brush file, and it will import that one. So now I have the brushes. So when you add new brushes to Procreate, they're going to end up at the very top of your brush list. So if you don't see them, it might just be getting cut off. So you need to scroll up and select the very top one right there. So next, I'm going to show you how to paint a simple galaxy, and I'll show you kind of an overview of what these brushes do and how to use them. So if I go to the Layers panel, I can select down here, and this layer is the default artwork. Just go ahead and clear that layer to delete the default artwork. And then you can add as many layers as you want down here in just paint. But make sure that you don't accidentally paint above the texture or it won't work. So here's the texture. So always make sure your layers are underneath it in order for that texture to work properly. So to start, I'm going to go to the Galaxy brush kit here at the top. And all these brushes, you don't need to use them all to paint a galaxy. In fact, you can paint a galaxy with probably just one or two of these brushes. But for this example, I'm going to try to use as many brushes as I can just to show you what they're good for. So I'm going to start with the Rainbow Nebula brush, and I'm going to choose pretty much any random color. These brushes will not paint the color that you choose, but it's okay because we can shift the color later on. So using the Rainbow Nebula, I'm just going to draw some random shapes, and you'll see what I mean about the random colors. Now this brush, if you layer it, you'll notice, all these brushes have different effects when you layer it, and you're just going to have to experiment with them and see what you can make. But just pretty much any combination will create something cool. So usually with the galaxy, the inside of it is very bright, and it fades to black at some point on the boundary there. So just making a few brush strokes has already given us a really interesting kind of a wash here. So this is a great background place to start. So next, I'm going to try a different brush. I'll try the Winter Nebula brush, and I'm just going to do some more random kind of cloudy brush strokes. I'm going to make sure I'm pressing hard and soft. And this brush, if I layer it, it does get darker. You'll notice that if I do lots of strokes, it gets darker and darker and darker. So there we go. I like the way this looks. Now, when you're painting galaxies, you might find out that one area is too bright or another area is too dark. So I have a way of controlling that with these brushes. So over in the brush panel, there's these two brushes on the top of the list, the glow cluster and the deep dark. And they say at the very end, lighten and darken. And that's explaining what these brushes do. So if you have an area that's too dark, you can go over and grab the glow cluster lighten brush. And it doesn't have to be white. It can be any color. If you just paint this one on, it's going to lighten whatever you painted on top of like that. Now the other one, the deep dark darken brush, this is going to darken whatever you painted on. So if you have an area that ended up being too bright, like this area maybe is a little bit too bright for my liking, I'm just going to gently go over it like this, pressing at different levels of pressure and just kind of darken that up again. And also I'm going to darken the edges here because I really like it when it looks like the galaxy is just fading off into deep space. Now there's a blender brush in this kit. It's at the very bottom. It's called the Water Blender Galaxy. And this is a brush you can use to fix areas that don't look quite right. So in this case, that doesn't look very nice. So what I'm going to do is at a medium size, I'm just going to tap this. And you'll notice it just sort of mixes up the color wherever I tap it, kind of mixes it around and then softens it up a little bit. And it's a good idea not to get too carried away with that one because it is nice if you have some, hard edge structure in the galaxy. But anywhere it just looks kind of weird and not quite right, you can just tap away at it and just sort of smooth it out. And it also works at a bigger size as well. So I'm going to mix this edge. This edge is a little bit too sudden. So I'm just going to tap along that edge and make it a little bit more irregular. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now I'm going to make a new layer above my galaxy. And I'm going to do the stars on this layer. So I'm going to choose pure white for the stars. And I'm going to choose the responsive star flicks brush. And at a pretty big size, I guess, I'm going to start by pressing very lightly and going down the middle of my galaxy. And this makes tiny, tiny stars. But if I press harder and go along the outside, it's going to make much bigger stars that are further apart. And I usually like the way that looks. It's totally up to you. It's up to your kind of style, but I really like it when out in the dark. There's bigger stars far away, and then over here in the cluster, it's like lots of tiny stars really close together. It just has a cool look. And then there's another star brush called the Shiny Stars Scatter Brush. And this one is pretty cool actually, but it's a good idea to use it pretty sparingly. So I'm just going to pass over this just once. And what this does is add these little twinkling stars in there. So this galaxy painting here could be totally done, but usually what I like to do at the end is trim it down a little bit because this is filling the whole artboard. So I'm going to go to my layers panel and just merge these two together. And I'm going to cut this down using the selection tool. So I'm going to grab the freehand selection tool, set it to freehand like that, and I'm going to draw a nice box around the area that I really like. So I think in this case it'll be like this, and I'll kind of join it at the end there. And now I can click copy and paste. And when I do that, it sort of cuts out that shape I drew and makes another layer. So now we have two layers, whereas before we had just one. So here's the original one, and I'll turn that off. And now you'll see that sort of selection I made, it's just been cut and copied onto the layer above. And I recommend giving the edges of these kind of a treatment because they end up being a little bit too sharp to be like realistic watercolor. So what I like to do is just use the eraser brush at any kind of brush really, any kind of rough brush on the edge, and just go down the edge and just make it a little bit more handmade looking. There we go. I think that looks a little bit better. The edge has this kind of handmade look. I really like the way that looks, much more than the super sharp edge. Now I'm going to reposition this, so I'll use the arrow tool and just move this sort of to the middle of the artboard. And now I'm going to show you how to use some of the other brushes. I'm going to use, let's see here, I'll go to the brush panel, and you have this Lone Pine brush and the Rough Mountain Round. These are for painting pine tree silhouettes and mountain silhouettes. So I'm going to make a new layer above my galaxy. I'll choose a really dark color. And I know that when I paint this dark color on the bottom of the galaxy, it's just going to, you're not going to really see it because it's already really dark here. So I'm going to try to lighten this part of the galaxy with the selection tool. I guess I'll demonstrate it so you know exactly what I mean. So if I make a new layer like that, I grab the mountain brush and I just paint some mountains. You can see that you just can't really see it over here in the dark area. It stands out much better over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my galaxy layer, this one. I'll just grab the selection tool set to freehand, and I'm going to circle around the areas that are really dark. I'll feather them out. I'll go to hue, saturation, and brightness, and I'm going to raise the brightness, right? Just so I brighten those areas so it's easier to see the mountains. And I'm also going to saturate them a little bit and maybe shift the hue. So now I'll go back to my mountain layer and turn that one on. And now it's much easier to see the mountains. So I'm going to erase the edge where the mountains went over the edge of my galaxy painting. There we go. And now I'm going to use the pine brush. So I'll make another layer. I'm going to grab the lone pine brush. And you know, at a pretty big size, I'm just going to go in there and press very softly and then harder and harder and make little tree silhouettes like this. And in some areas it'll be easier to see them in others, but it's a nice look. They have a kind of mysterious look when they do kind of lose contrast and disappear. And if you want to add more stars, that's what this brush is for, this gel pen brush. So if I make a new layer above everything and choose pure white, I can grab this gel pen brush and just draw on some bigger sort of custom stars. And you can also use these to draw on like constellations. For example, you could do any kind of simple pattern like this. Then you could connect them just like that and create constellations just like that. So I think that about wraps it up for this tutorial. One thing I do want to mention is that if you look over here into the white area, this does have a paper texture, but it's actually handled separately than the paper texture on the galaxy image. So you can turn off this paper texture by going to the layers panel, opening up the paper texture group, and the very top layer, on off paper background. If you just uncheck that, you can see that this becomes pure white now, which will print much better. And then also it leaves the actual painting totally unaffected. So this is just a kind of an option that I made for you guys. So there we go. This one is all done. Let me know what you think of this process in the comments, or if you have any questions about this kit, just let me know. You can send me an email, leave a comment, or send me a message on Etsy, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.